Welcome to the chilling world of medieval justice, where one figure stood as both an embodiment of terror and a necessary instrument of law, the executioner. In this video, we delve into the complex and often misunderstood role of these grim figures who wielded the power of life and death. Through the lens of history, we focus on the life of Franz Schmidt, the official executioner of Nuremberg from 1578 to 1617, whose skill and precision became legendary. This video uncovers the brutal methods, psychological toll, and societal stigma faced by executioners throughout the Middle Ages. Join us as we explore the moral and emotional struggles behind this necessary yet reviled profession. Stay with us as we journey through time, uncovering the harrowing tale of those who brought justice or death to the condemned. In the merciless days of the 15th and 16th centuries, one figure loomed large and ominous, embodying terror and the unyielding grip of justice. This figure was none other than the executioner, a role that brought both fear and fascination. One such man was Franz Schmidt, who served as the official executioner of Nuremberg from 1578 to 1617. Shrouded in darkness, the executioner held the power of life and death in his very hands. With a single swing of the axe or the tightening of the noose, the executioner could silence the cries of the condemned forever. The profession often led to social isolation, yet it also drew a macabre kind of intrigue from the public. The medieval executioner, clothed in a dark hood to shield his identity from the vengeful gaze of the crowd, was both despised and revered in a time when gruesome punishments like the breaking wheel, drawing and quartering, and burning at the stake were commonplace. The executioner's skill and precision were crucial to a swift and, if possible, merciful end. Franz Schmidt, during his career, recorded carrying out a staggering 361 executions, along with numerous other punishments. But who were these men of death? Were they heartless killers or reluctant servants of a brutal system? As Voltaire famously remarked, "It is forbidden to kill. Therefore, all murderers are punished, unless they kill in large numbers and to the sound of trumpets." Let us venture into the shadowy world of the medieval executioner, where we explore the complex nature of their lives and duties. During the Middle Ages, the role of an executioner was both feared and shunned by society. Despite the stigma surrounding this grim profession, some individuals chose to become the harbingers of death. To understand the journey of a medieval executioner, we must explore the training and apprenticeship process that shaped their careers. In an era when formal education was scarce, the path to becoming an executioner was often inherited through family tradition. Many executioners came from long lines of executioners, with the trade being passed down from one generation to the next. For example, the legendary Sanson family of France served as the royal executioners for over 2 centuries. Young apprentices would often be mentored by their fathers or other male relatives, learning the craft through hands-on experience. Apprenticeships typically began in adolescence, with young boys assisting their elders in simple executions such as hanging or drowning. As they matured, apprentices were introduced to more complex and gruesome forms of execution, such as drawing and quartering. Along with mastering these brutal methods, apprentices were trained in the use of execution tools like the executioner's axe, sword, and the early versions of the guillotine. One such apprentice was Franz Schmidt, born in 1555 in present-day Germany. Schmidt was the son of a woodsman and a convicted poacher. At the age of 18, he was apprenticed to his stepfather, who was an executioner. Over time, Schmidt honed his skills and eventually became the official executioner of Nuremberg in 1578. He held this position for 45 years, leaving behind a rare journal that offers a glimpse into the life of a medieval executioner. During their apprenticeship, aspiring executioners would witness numerous executions, becoming accustomed to the grisly nature of their work. They also learned the important rituals associated with executions, such as reading the condemned's sentence aloud and ensuring the proper disposal of the body after death. A key part of their education was learning how to handle the psychological challenges of the profession. Many executioners relied on religion to justify their actions, seeing themselves as instruments of divine justice. This concept of being divinely chosen was crucial in helping executioners cope with the brutality of their work. An interesting historical anecdote highlights the importance of precision in execution. In 1649, King Charles I of England was set to be executed by decapitation. Richard Brandon, the appointed executioner, was so nervous about carrying out the task that he consumed alcohol to steady his nerves. However, the first blow of his axe failed to sever the king's head, requiring a second strike to complete the execution. This mishap only emphasized the importance of skill and training in the executioner's work. A botched execution could lead to chaos, not only affecting the victim, but also undermining the power and authority of those who sanctioned the execution. One famous executioner, Charles-Henri Sanson, was responsible for executing King Louis XVI during the French Revolution. As he carried out the task, Sanson famously declared, "The king is no more," a simple phrase that marked the end of an era and symbolized the birth of a new political order. The medieval world was marked by a variety of brutal and grisly execution methods used by rulers and courts to enforce power, deter crime, and sometimes to provide a macabre form of entertainment for the masses. These execution methods often captivated and horrified audiences, turning the act of death into a public spectacle. One of the most common methods of execution during the Middle Ages was hanging. This method was primarily reserved for commoners. The condemned would be led to a scaffold or gallows, often accompanied by a procession, and a priest would administer last rites. A noose would be placed around the condemned's neck, and the executioner would remove the support beneath them, causing the person to fall and be suspended by the rope. A skilled executioner aimed to snap the neck, ensuring a swift death. Beheading, on the other hand, was typically reserved for nobles and higher-ranking individuals. A famous example of beheading is the execution of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII, in 1536. Anne was accused of adultery, incest, and treason and was sentenced to decapitation. The king, however, imported a skilled swordsman from France to perform the execution, as it was considered more humane compared to the axe. This method of beheading was believed to deliver a cleaner and faster death. Burning at the stake was another popular method of execution, especially for those accused of heresy or witchcraft. Joan of Arc, the French national heroine, was burned at the stake in 1431 after being accused of heresy. This grisly punishment involved tying the condemned to a wooden stake and surrounding them with flammable materials. The executioner would then light the pyre, causing the person to perish in the flames. Drawing and quartering was one of the most brutal forms of execution, usually reserved for those convicted of high treason. The process involved several stages. The condemned would be hanged until nearly dead, then disemboweled, beheaded, and finally, their body would be dismembered into 4 parts. This method of execution was most famously carried out on William Wallace in 1305, the Scottish patriot, who was executed by the English. The tools and instruments used in these executions ranged from axes and swords for beheadings to ropes for hangings and firewood for burning. Executioners wielded these instruments with grim precision, carrying out their duties with a chilling sense of duty and professionalism. The medieval executioner was a figure both feared and reviled, and their identity was often hidden to shield them from the public's wrath. In an era when execution was a public event, executioners were not only tasked with delivering death, but also with managing the public's reaction. Their anonymity served a practical purpose. Being an executioner was a socially stigmatized profession. Executioners were often seen as pariahs, outcasts in society who were treated with disdain by their fellow townspeople. To protect themselves from potential retribution, executioners would wear hoods or masks, concealing their faces. These hoods were often made of dark cloth or leather, leaving only the eyes exposed. In some regions, these hoods were adorned with grotesque features, enhancing their fearsome reputation. Executioners' clothing was typically dark and unadorned, designed to blend into the shadows and avoid drawing attention to the wearer. They would wear long coats, gloves, and sturdy boots to protect themselves from the gruesome nature of their work. The hoods and masks not only protected their identity but also served to instill fear and respect in the condemned, who would see the hooded figure as the embodiment of death itself. Despite the stigma attached to the profession, there were some executioners who gained notoriety and became well-known figures. Charles-Henri Sanson, the chief executioner of France during the French Revolution, became infamous for his role in executing King Louis XVI. Sanson's work was regarded with a certain degree of professionalism, and he was even respected by some of his contemporaries. However, for most executioners, the stigma of their work remained, and they were largely regarded as necessary evils, performing the task that others could not. The life of an executioner was fraught with difficulty. Not only were they feared and hated for their work, but they were also ostracized by society. Executioners were often forced to live on the outskirts of towns, near cemeteries or other places associated with death. Their families, too, suffered the stigma of their profession. Marriages were often arranged within families of executioners, ensuring that the social stigma remained contained within their insular community. Despite the social isolation, many executioners were able to find solace in their work. Some, like Franz Schmidt, kept detailed journals of their work, documenting the complex and sometimes conflicting emotions they felt. Schmidt, who served as the executioner of Nuremberg for 45 years, provided a rare glimpse into the life of an executioner through his writings. These journals reveal a man who took pride in his work, despite the psychological toll it took on him. In some cases, executioners found ways to cope with the harsh realities of their profession. Some viewed their work as a necessary duty, a form of divine justice that allowed them to distance themselves from the brutality of their actions. Others focused on perfecting their craft, taking pride in their skills and precision. However, for many, the psychological burden of their profession was overwhelming. Alcoholism, depression, and PTSD were common among executioners, who struggled to cope with the emotional toll of their work. Executioners were compensated for their gruesome work, though their earnings were often modest. In many cases, they were paid a fixed salary by local authorities, which provided them with a degree of financial stability. However, their income was often supplemented by fees for performing specific tasks. The more gruesome the execution, the higher the fee. For example, executing a common criminal by hanging would earn the executioner a small fee. But more elaborate executions, such as drawing and quartering, could command a higher price. Executioners also received additional benefits, such as legal protection, ensuring they could not be prosecuted for acts committed during the course of their duties. This legal immunity was essential, as executioners were often targeted by the friends or families of the condemned, who sought revenge for the death of their loved ones. In addition to their salary, executioners could claim the belongings of the condemned, which could be a lucrative source of income, especially if the person executed was wealthy. Executioners might also receive a portion of the fines levied against the condemned or their families. Despite these rewards, many executioners struggled to make ends meet, and some turned to bribery or other illicit means to supplement their income. Thank you for joining us on this haunting exploration into the life of medieval executioners. From the shadows of history, we have unearthed the complex reality of those who held the power of life and death in their hands. Whether it was Franz Schmidt's meticulous records or the infamous botched executions that marred the profession's reputation, we have seen the dual nature of these men. They were both tools of justice and figures of dread. The executioner's role evolved over time, shifting from a brutal necessity to a more impersonal, clinical act in modern society. But one thing remains clear: their stories, often hidden behind hoods and masks, serve as an essential part of our understanding of history. If you found this journey through the medieval world of executioners fascinating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the darker corners of our past. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.